Shalom. Welcome to this latest Israel news update for those pro-Israel advocates out there, especially teen ones. Okay, the latest news out of sanctions efforts against Iran. Iran obviously being our biggest story every single week until they agree to give up their aspirations for a nuclear weapon. The biggest story is that on Shabbat, on this past Saturday, President Obama signed into law the Iran Threat Reduction Act. That was within the larger picture of the latest defense bill. This is a great move. First of all, the defense bill gives Israel another $236 million on top of the already given $3.075 billion annually. This is an extra $236 million for another Iron Dome system and further research and development. But this bill now signed in further sanctions Iran, especially their central bank and their oil regards. There was a little controversy between Congress and the Senate and disagreements with the president as to how far this will go. The main concern by the president was spiking oil prices. If we sanction Iran too much and their oil is not allowed to be sold and the price of oil goes up, starting the global economy into a spin and accomplishing, on the one hand, something very good, but on the other hand, something very negative. That was one concern the president had. Another concern that the administration had was that you might be stuck in a situation where people that are really helping, Japan and other allies that are helping in the fight against Iran, will have negative consequences which will cause them to throw everything out. So instead of losing the baby with the bathwater, what the president asked for was certain permissions to alleviate some of the sanctions if need be, and that's up to the president's wishes. That was put into the bill. For more information on that, please see my cheat sheet, which goes into greater detail. Okay, Iran obviously reacted towards these sanctions and totally dismissed them and said that they're unjustifiable, and anything trying to reduce Iran's oil production is completely unjustifiable. Iran last week conducted 10 days of naval exercises in the Straits of Hormuz, out on their coastline, showing the world that if need be they could shut down the Strait of Hormuz, and that's exactly what they threatened, saying it would be easier than drinking a glass of water. The Americans responded by saying that if they even tried such a thing, whether it be by ships blockading or by dropping mines into the water, anything that would disrupt the world's oil transportation and the closing of the Strait of Hormuz would be met with great consequence. Since then, the Iranians have backed off and said that they're not so interested in blocking the Straits of Hormuz. Obviously, we'll have to see what will come out of that. Iran did fire off a couple of long-range missiles, tested long-range missiles as part of these Navy exercises, and that's a little dangerous for us because those missiles can reach American interests in the Middle East and especially Israel itself. Okay, the Iran also successfully tested nuclear fuel rods, which and put them into action, which again worries us as their nuclear aspirations grow and grow. Okay, last week we discussed how Israel and the Palestinians had reached a cliff on the peace talks, and it seemed like both sides were willing to jump off and not come to the table. Well, lo and behold, for the first time since September 2010, the Palestinians and the Israelis are going to have face-to-face meetings. This comes out of the quartet, the four countries that together make up a great effort at peace between the Israelis and the Palestinians, putting a January 26th deadline on face-to-face negotiations. So the deadline's coming up. They'll sit down. Before we get too optimistic, we have to realize that the Palestinian Authority is still trying to join a unity government and join together with Hamas, Hamas being on their world tour and going around and showing how great they are. So Prime Minister Netanyahu will not sit down with the Palestinian Authority as long as they're joined together with Hamas, which means that even if we sit down for direct negotiations, if the Palestinian Authority decides to join in with Hamas, then that's the end of negotiations. Of course, Hamas themselves rejected all notions of peace talks and said that they're pointless and that the Palestinian Authority has no authority to sit down and have peace talks. Meanwhile, the Palestinians themselves showed their true colors and how much they're interested in peace by threatening to bring, and they're going to bring, a motion to the United Nations Security Council to condemn Israel for further building in the disputed areas of Judea and Samaria, what they call the West Bank, and therefore we're going to see that more and more of Abbas's true colors. We find it as well that one of the released terrorists in the Gilad Shalit deal, a man who was responsible for planning bloodshed, was appointed as an advisor to President Abbas. It's exactly who we need as advisors to our peace partners, our former terrorists who are unrepentant. And don't be too optimistic about the peace process at all, because Saeb Erekat, the spokesperson for the Palestinian Authority, said that if Israel doesn't agree to pre-negotiations, the preconditions on the negotiations, meaning going back to the 67 line, saying that's going to be the definitive border, and that the Palestinians have the right of return, so then there's no point in sitting down to have negotiations in the first place, and these are going to be fruitless. So there's our hopes for an optimistic peace process, but at least we're sitting down face to face, something the Palestinians have refused to do until this point. Please check out the cheat sheet that accompanies this video. All the best.